Welcome to episode 2 of the Spoiler Alert podcast. Today, we're going after the movie Black Swan. I'm your host, Nate Krenz, and here with me is Dakota Scott. How's it
I'm
going,
the
Dakota?
fucking host. You're the
We're
co-host.
we're
I'm
we're we're
I'm
we're
I'm
all
good.
we're
Thank
already
you.
having our social network breakdown. And
Yeah.
just an episode in. But anyway, how is it going, Dakota?
Yeah, it's going well. You know, it's great.
Yeah, it's gonna take
Yeah.
all of us. It's gonna take all of us.
Yeah, you're all drugged up right now because of your wisdom teeth. I'm trying to be supportive, you know. So, I don't
All
want to have
right.
an ex that you don't.
All right. So Black Swan was directed by Darren Aronofsky, and I know he's one of, if not your favorite director. Where would you rank Black Swan in your top Darren Aronofsky films?
Oh, that sucks. I never thought. I haven't actually thought about it. Uh, I don't know. I like it a lot. Honestly, the only two films that I really feel are weaker are probably, well, yeah, okay, three. I have a respect for The Fountain, but and then Noah and Mother are a little,
Mhm.
I not to say I don't like them, but they're not as strongest. But pretty much everything up to that point, is really good. So this maintains that.
Yeah, I thought it was one of his technically most strong ones. Like it seemed like a movie that at that point in his career he was really well practiced and had a bunch of different tricks, bunch of different ideas, and was
Mhm.
able to implement them all. Not saying he didn't for Pi and things like that, but it's
Yeah,
just he just has more practice at that point, and at that point too, Black Swan might be before Noah, might be the highest budget film he did, quite possibly.
oh yeah, I don't even know what the budget on this was. So I mean,
If you weren't able to tune into the first episode, quick spiel of what we do here at Spoiler Alert. We are going to be talking about the ends of movies and things like that. Um, we're just long form review discussions over all kinds of different movies. And if partway through our through the first 15 or 30 minutes or so, you can be pretty rest assured that we're going to be talking about the first half of the movie. So if at that
yeah, it's pretty
point,
long for.
right. So if at that point you figure hey, I want to see this movie, I haven't seen it yet. We encourage you to just hit a like, hit the subscribe button, uh, fast forward to make sure we get a view, please. Um, uh, we're, pretty
About 30
please.
minutes in, it counts as a view. I know that much.
30 minutes
Oh,
into
sorry.
any video. All right.
Yeah, in fact, I think you only have to watch like two.
Oh,
So I guess the first 2 minutes should be like Breaking Bad levels of engaging, and then just
I mean, so we have
like
that
yeah, then
down
we
at
can get as
least.
lazy
I
as we
mean,
want.
we're so engaging right now. So the opening scene we get is what turns out to be a dream that Nina, ballet dancer, played by Natalie Portman, she's having a dream that she's dancing. I believe at that point it's the White Swan. At that point in the musical, or the
Yeah,
play, it kind of just sets a tone of the dualities that would go on in the rest of the movie between light and dark, and the White Swan and the Black Swan, and innocence and fearlessness. And
right. Oh,
I just thought it was a really good way to start off the movie. What did you think about that, Dakota?
the sort of the supernatural. Like it starts off very like you think you're watching a ballet, and you probably have some sense of like the film that you're going to be getting yourself into, and then there's that. It becomes kind of otherworldly and supernatural. The seductive.
Is it? Yeah, okay, just gonna be honest out there. I've never seen a ballet. Uh,
No, I
Now,
don't
yeah,
have an
no,
excuse. I'm actually familiar with Swan Lake, and I'm like, I don't even know what the fuck his name would be. Like a guy, they say
isn't he
it
like a
5,000
warlock?
times in the movie.
Is he called like a warlock?
He looks like one.
Shortly after that, we get like a small sample of her relationship with her mother, which she's very much like a helicopter parent type slash like more intense, where it's I don't know
It's not quite Carrie level or anything, but it's you do get a sense of yeah.
right. So the mother's relationship is like very doting. Like you can definitely tell that the mother does really love and care for her daughter. It gets to the point where it's a little creepy though, because like later on in the film, Natalie Portman's character Nina gets the news that she got
The part.
she got the part in Swan Lake as I'm not sure what the name of like her actual swan is, like if it's just
Oh,
like the
I
white
suppose.
swan. But yeah, let's just go in on the first relationship that we see in the movie between Nina and her mother. Her mother is very doting. She's definitely like one of those honey boo boo kind of moms in a certain way.
I never thought Honey Boo Boo would end up anywhere near a Darren Aronofsky film. So that's got to be a first there for breaking new ground. God.
And at one point, it was probably the most obvious to me at one point. Nina gets the part, and the mother brings home a cake. So she's not like enough of a like poor
The cake
mother to be like
up froze.
to be like we can't have any celebrations just yet. But like it is kind of weird when like she takes like a fingerful of frosting and like feeds it to Nina, and it's almost like a baby bird and a mother bird, like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
way
yeah.
it's
That's
fed,
an
it's
interesting way.
like it's not like vomited through the beak, but it's like the human equivalent where it's like I'm feeding you for you, I'm doing this, I'm doing that.
Right.
And you can tell that's where like Natalie Portman also just like really feeds into the innocence of that character. What did you think about the mother character?
Well, obviously, so she's kind of failed at ballet. I mean, Natalie Portman's character has sort of that line about you were already 28, you were past your prime, because she says, well, I quit ballet to to have you and raise you. My takeaway is that like in all this nurturing, it's almost a way of sabotaging Portman's character, and as a way of like telling yourself that like, well, that I had to do that, and it was all born of necessity or whatever. And so I think there's that resentment, like, or at least that's, I think Portman's perspective is that she's being sabotaged, by the mother, on some level, because she was too scared to be great, or who knows what happened, but she just wasn't able, and I think that comes up later in the picture, at the very end. But where what seems like very nurturing behavior is really kind of inactive sabotage. That's something I kind of picked up on, I thought. But I mean, just like little moments or whatever that I think of, that I would kind of attach to other things I'd probably talk about later on in the film. Like you have the grapefruit at the beginning, and they have sort of, it must like an inside joke or whatever, but it's so pink, so pretty, or whatever. And you see her rooms bathed in pink, and she's wearing pink all the time very early in the film, pink or white. And so I think that kind of sets something up.
Like she like literally like dresses and undresses Nina oftentimes.
Oh
And
yeah.
we do see like early on in the film like the beginnings of a rash, uh
Mhm.
which looks like kind of pimply and sort of uh like
Goosebumpy, yeah, right.
um but through I think the reality, like through the mother's reality, I think it only shows up as scratch marks, and those scratches are implied of like a thing in their past where like she like must like have like stress dreams to the level that like she scratches herself in the middle of the night and stuff like that. Like it sounded like something that they've been through before, and that progresses as we go.
Something I was surprised by, I mean, early on in the film was, because I think the last time I saw this was at least 7 years ago, even though I like the movie a lot. But yeah, you said Lily is a lot more peripheral very early in the film. I thought I remembered her having a larger role, and ultimately she does. But it's actually interesting just how little the film kind of acknowledges her presence for almost like it feels like the first half. So I don't know how much there is to. There's, I think, obviously a reason for that. It's that she's only just starting to flirt with the idea of like I need to break free of this whole kind of white swan persona. So I think that character becomes a lot more important later on. But as far as her place in the rest of the ballet, it's there's sort of this backstabbing, or whatever going on. I mean, it's not. I don't know how important it ultimately is. It might contribute to her lack of being willing to go along with the Lily character, who keeps seeming to want to be, kind of her friend. I think there's a certain level of distrust there, but probably more than anything, it's just that's a distraction, and everything kind of comes out of, I mean, she's completely focused on her craft.
I think you're right, and I think it's also like what adds into it is that it becomes pretty apparent that she never really had that many friends or just basic social interactions.
Yeah, I think that's a good bit of unspoken storytelling where just you can tell what kind of person she is. The things I was very impressed by watching was the sound design. That was really impressive, but also all the little visual touches. I think the special effects still hold up very much, even watching it at a much higher resolution TV than I ever did. But as far as like little things that were inserted in the kind of tell a bit of a story, like one thing I noticed was that the wood in the floor of her home or whatever in front of the mirror where she practices at home is actually worn. Like, so you get the sense that she's doing this all the time. Like, this is her life. In fact, you even have that line at the end of the film where the guy playing the piano is like, "I've got a life. Good luck. Don't work yourself too hard." Like this is what she does. That's the kind of person she is. And yeah, I mean, it tends not to probably lend itself to having a big social circle. She has this sole focus, but that's also why she's the best. There's sacrifice there. But yeah, I mean,
yeah, I agree. And the editing strategy in those scenes were definitely done as to evoke a routine. So like you saw like just
that's interesting.
Yeah. So I think you saw just like a straight shot of her taping up her toes, and then an isolated shot of her like ripping her shoe apart, and an isolated shot of her getting the shoe on. And it's just like a step-by-step process that it takes the audience through. I thought that was a very clever editing and directing technique there.
And does that kind of repeat as the film goes on? I can't remember.
It's more so in the early,
but you at least get a sense through the first scene that this is.
Well, one of the things that I noticed that is common for like throughout the film is this movie might have the most mirrors per minute I've ever seen in any movie. Mirrors. There's mirrors in like almost every scene. Like physical mirrors.
That's interesting.
And
that has to be hard to shoot around.
Oh, so hard. Right. Like, because, well, part of it, a lot of it, they're in like the makeup rooms. So those are mirrors everywhere. That's always hard to shoot.
Yeah.
And then there's like subtle ones where you're in the dance hall. There's always mirrors there. And then there's like more subtle ones where you're like in Vincent Castle's office and like there's still mirrors there too. She's wandering through like a dark sort of backstage area where you would expect there to be almost nothing. And there's still mirrors all over the place there too. There's mirrors all over this thing. So that's obviously at the very least a heavily used motif. What's up?
Yeah, right. But no, I actually didn't catch on to that though. That they are like almost omnipresent. But now that you mentioned, yeah, I'm just thinking that like. Yeah, would be a shooting nightmare. But
so what did you think of her relation, or what did you think of the Vincent Castle character? Do you think he was, because it's shown pretty quick that like he has sexual relationships with like basically like the leads is what it ends up being, because like Winona Ryder's character Beth,
Mhm.
she was the Black Swan before Nina ends up becoming the Black Swan. And like they had like like it was like rumored about among the ballet
Yeah,
performers
I
that
mean,
they had
clear
a
enough.
sexual
Yeah,
relationship, and she's retiring too, so they're looking, so like Vincent Castle's looking for his new
it seems sort of
replacement.
involuntarily, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like an involuntary retirement, and like it's almost like Vincent Castle, it's like kind of implied like, oh, she's gotten too old for him, so he's gonna like look for his next prodigy, which is also like fuck buddy.
Yeah, that's
Like,
that sort of a tension that plays out through the film. I mean, it is. But as far as I mean, you do get the sense that Cassell's character really, I mean, does appreciate his. I mean, does appreciate his women. I mean, like in what they in the greatness that they're able to achieve. I mean, that does seem to be his priority over the womanizing. You know, he doesn't bed Natalie Portman's character, and you know, you assume that's where the scene's going. But I think when he invites her to his apartment, that wouldn't really give it anywhere to go. So he first and foremost really is primarily concerned with her performance. So, you
right.
know, and I think it's that greatness that he really is truly pursuing.
And well,
Definitely a womanizer, but
which is kind of fucked up, but I don't know, it seems like an honest portrayal of how those kind of directors behaved at the time, or maybe still behave, since like she's so innocent and she's so technically like precise and just like a pro in that sense. Like she has the best white swan that like in anyone on the company. But what she can't do is she can't cut loose. She can't dance fearlessly, and that's what you need with the black swan.
isn't the first time when she tries to appeal to him for the part in his office?
Yeah, and then he kissed her there,
And that's
and
the whole thing that got her the part was that it
right,
she bit him, and then you know, yeah, and then like
and
that was the thing that
and
gave
I
him
think
hope
that
that like
to I think that to Castle's character was like a little clue, like, oh, she does have a dark side to her. Like it is there somewhere.
no,
Like,
I think that was completely what gave it to her. Was like
yeah,
I don't think he was entirely lying when he said he was considering the other girl, but I think when she bites him, that was the thing where he's like, oh shit, that like she does. There's hope. There's potential. You know, and then it is what changed his mind because he was like, didn't you come in here to change my mind? You know, you must have thought it was possible, and that bite I think is what does it.
yep.
So
And then the second time they have a scene like that, they're dancing, and like this is still probably circa early second act here. Um,
yeah,
they're dancing, and he's like staring in her eyes like longingly and whatnot, and like they kiss at the end of their dance, and then he's actually mad at her because he's like, that was me seducing you, not you seducing me. So he is a womanizer, but he uses it as a tool to get the best performance possible, which,
yeah.
you know, uh you can respect or disrespect, but that's
That's I
that's
think he's
pretty
kind of in a
accurate to
lot of
what this
ways.
character is supposed to be, though.
Exactly. I know. I think Cassell's performance in the film is I easily like the most underrated because I think a lot of people like it, you totally understand that character. Like I mean, entirely. Like and what he's after and what he's trying to get out of the dancers. You know, and so and but to play that in a way that isn't like the stereotypical, you know, like pervy bastard, and you really do sense his passion for the project, you know, and that always does come first. But there's somewhere, even though you completely understand him, there is this undefined like layer of like uncertainty, certainly for Nina's character, as far as like, is this part of the dance or is this another kind of dance? And you know, and he's playing around with that, you know, the whole time. And I think it just is something that shrouds the whole film in another dimension of uncertainty, you know. So blurring the lines between the play and the you know what's real and what's not and whatever. So those doubts she has, am I going to end up like Beth, you know, or not? You know, does he say this to all the women, or is that just for Beth? You know, and I think obviously when she's having that conversation with the Mila Kunis character, I mean, I don't know if she's actually talking to Mila Kunis because I think they're, you know, as the film goes on, it becomes clear those are two people. So it's probably a conversation she's having with herself, expressing her own doubts with herself about that
Yeah,
dynamic.
yeah. Even though she didn't have a big role in the first part of the movie, let's introduce Mila Kunis's character. Her name is Lily. She's got back tats. She was always like friendly towards
Yeah.
Nina and like, hey, we should go have drinks. We should do this. We should do that. Even to the like, and she was just never nasty to anybody. And the way she dances and
Well,
Vincent Castle's.
in a way, she's above it. She's truly free. She's not limited by, like everybody else is, they really care
Yeah.
about,
I mean,
the
if
dance.
she broke her leg and couldn't do it, like she would be upset, I'm sure, but she would not be like she would not take
She's not
it
going to
to
be scrawling horror on the glass on the mirror in the bathroom. She doesn't care that much, or
yeah,
at least
which
we don't think she does. But there's always a little bit of doubt around that. Is if this whole thing is just an act at trying to get on Nina's side and then sabotage her.
yeah, that plays into hallucinations later. And just real quick, I do agree that like Vincent Castle's character is one of the more is like underratedly technically precise. It's just I don't think he was ever going to get the shine that year specifically for like supporting actor for
Oh
the
no, yeah, no,
Oscars.
no. I
Just
don't think it's a picture about him. I just think he plays that role perfectly, though.
well, just specifically for that year, like supporting actors in like a drama for the Academy Awards, you had like Christian Bale.
Okay,
Like
yeah.
2010 was just loaded. Like 2010 had a lot of
I
good
can't
movies.
remember that year.
Either way,
Either
Mila
True Grit
Kunis's
or something else.
character, she was definitely really good in it, and I think the casting of her was about as good as you could be, because like just Mila Kunis as a person, like is a lot more of a relatable person. Because I feel like stars for whatever reason are always more relatable when they get fame on like TV
From
sitcoms
TV going into film.
because
Yeah.
because you're so vulnerable when you like first get into something like that. Like you're really young. It was probably like I think she was like a kid actor for a while, so it probably wasn't her first gig for that 70s show, but it was pretty early. You see so much of that person that you innately trust them. And like
Oh yeah.
I think that's a really good dynamic to have, because like one of the most trustworthy characters in this entire thing is Mila's character, because like the entire time she's just honest about stuff and like
Yeah, and I
yeah
think even towards the end where like Nina, starts with like she's after my part, she's at like you have the Lily character who's like she said she was, she's gonna be done for the day. But I mean, anybody might be a little annoyed at being jerked around a bit, and but obviously Nina's reading that as like see proof, and it's supposed to create that in the audience's mind as well, that like, oh, she really was after the part. She told Toma to go easy on her, or so she says. And then Toma gives her shit for that. Like maybe you'd like to take the day off. Maybe, I mean, and all that. I think the next, like you're being a diva base, not quite that, but like, don't be so weak, don't,
yeah
and that's because of the Mila Kunis character, telling him go easier, so I think she saw that as, again, another act of sabotage where she comes trying to be her friend, trying to be relatable, but then goes to Tuma and tells us, tells him all that shit, like she can't take it, and so I think that's one of the first signs that, like, you're supposed to think don't trust Lily,
and Nina's mom and Nina have like a spat like right as that's happening, right as Lily's visiting to apologize.
Yeah, it
And
was something about her working herself too hard or something like that, right? I
yeah,
mean,
and I think they noticed like more scratches too. So
yeah.
so basically Nina uses Lily as like a way away from her mom. So like that's kind of like leaving the nest type of thing. Yeah. And like basically they go out to get drinks. Uh Lily spikes Nina's drink, but like she kind of like gets caught too doing it, but like
Yeah,
okay,
that's it. I
like
mean,
she's
yeah.
still like kind of okay with it. Like she still makes the decision to drink it too. I don't know that.
I think she even, I pretty straightforwardly acknowledges it because the Lily character says, well, they're talking over it, and she's like, well, how long does it last? And she's like, 2 hours tops. And she's like, no, I'm good. But then she walks in and sees her spiking it, and then she doesn't let on that she knows, but
She
but
knows.
then she even asks right before she takes it, it's just 2 hours, right? And she's like, yeah. So to me, that's like affirmation that, yeah, she totally knows what she's getting herself into.
They basically start partying, and then Nina is making out with one of the guys that Lily
I think
set
it
him
was a
up with.
different dude entirely.
I think it
I
was
think it was
I
just
think it was one of the Tom or Jerry characters.
I thought it was just some totally different guy in like a totally different club, I think, is where she comes to basically.
All right, and then this is
Um,
where we're going to start to delve into spoilers and not care. So, like when she's making out with Tom or whatever his name is, I think that's when we first I think that's when the hallucination starts, because ever since then, like, it's pretty much just it's just Lily taking Nina home and going down on her. And then there's also like a bit of a spat with the mom again on the way out there, but it's implied more and more that like she hallucinates that stuff though. So like,
oh yeah, no, I think I certainly I think I know what's going on with that scene, but I wouldn't say it's the first hallucination in the whole picture or anything, because I mean we
no,
see. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that's something that's interesting to know, is way before she ever gets the part or there's even talk of it. There's one hallucination that I can think of for sure where she thinks she sees herself passing her on this what do you call that,
subway car.
those things, no, walking over a highway, what do you call those, fuck, what are they
I think I
called?
know what you're talking about, the Skywalk or whatever.
Yeah, God, Jesus. Anyway, so, and she thinks she sees herself, and so I think there's this yearning to break out of herself before she ever gets a part, you know is how I take that. But yeah, as far as the Mila Kunis character and the well, I guess this would be a good time to kind of bring in the color aspect. I'm sure you noticed, like, you brought it up, the light and the dark and all that. But at the very start of the film, she's wearing pink, and then I think once the part kind of comes into play, she wears a lot of white.
A lot of
Then
grays.
yeah, then she starts to wear grays, and then it's black over white. Like, she literally wears Lily borrows her top, and she wears it over her white undershirt or whatever.
Oh, that's
And
nice.
Yeah, and then obviously the transition fully into black. But Lily's always wearing black, and so that's something. But I think she's wearing Lily's top that she borrows her. She's a spruce up a bit, and it's black. And then when she comes to out of like the drugged up haze, that top is gone. Who the fuck knows where it is? And she's running around in white again. So like that's her kind of snapping the fuck out of the black Swan, persona or whatever. Because like you said, she's some dudes like on her neck, in the bathroom stalls, and so
Yeah.
this
So what
blob.
did you so like in the movie we see when they go back to their room, like Nina, Lily, and the mom like actually like have words back and forth, like going into the room.
Yeah.
Uh what do
Well,
you
you can.
think is the reality, since we learn later that they never actually did and that she's hallucinating?
Yeah.
What do you actually think that the mom saw? You know what I mean?
Oh well, it's that's clear enough, because, like, I mean, I think it again. It's not your first viewing. Nothing's very clear. I actually was surprised by how straightforward it seemed this time, because I remembered it well enough. But yeah, no, you can see the Lily character mouthing what, say this basically from around the corner, and then Natalie Portman is saying those words. So I think it's, obviously the
Oh,
Lily character. Yeah, so you can see that play out. Um, I think was it like, there were, oh, you want to know their names? They were Tom and Jerry, and I fucked them both, and like that whole thing. I think that's what she was mouthing. I can't remember, but somewhere in there you see that play out. But uh,
I mean, really, like Nina's probably like in the reality of the scene through like the mother's perspective or whatever.
oh, she's probably masturbating
Yeah.
in a room,
Yep.
like, but yeah, but there's a lot happening there, I think, psychologically with the character. I mean, you like, at one point you see her face projected over Mila Kunis's character when she comes up for air
Mhm.
or whatever, And it's this big scare moment, like that. There's a musical cue and everything, dun, 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 and like, and then, I mean, yeah, I think we skipped over a lot of that talk, but one of the things that Tamad tells her to do is go home and masturbate, because it's like, you need to, like
Cut
you
loose.
said, get a little looser. But I think there's a lot happening there. But then at the end of that scene, there's you literally see Natalie Portman smother herself. But before that, she says the lines that the mother, always says, but sweet girl. It gets kind of weird, and But I think the idea of that scene is, well, it's not even the mother so much as herself that's been smothering her this whole time. I think that's the realization at the end of it, is that I've been smothering myself, and
We cut to the next day. Nina sleeps in. Her mom doesn't wake her up, because at this point, and this is where I respect Nina's mom as a mother. At this point, she's like, no, the ballet's bad for you right now. You're not going. Right. So that to me is she is the mother and Vincent Castle's characters are similar in that they have a creepy side to them, an untrustworthy side to them, an overly...
I think everybody does in this film.
Right. That's true. But then you have they believe it's for Nina's own good. To Vincent Castle, he believes,
because, like you said, he never begs her. The priority is getting the best performance out of her, and it's if he can tell that's where she thinks it's going to go. She is obviously, she admires him a great deal, and she'd probably go along with that. But then there's nowhere to take that relationship, so he kind of holds it off, because he's I need, he uses it to get that performance.
And similarly with the mother, although she's kind of the perfectionist, doting, my perfect little girl type of mother, she does care for the overall the health of her daughter, you know what I mean, in a way that's admirable.
Right, but you could always read it the other way, the way that Nina does, and that you're sabotaging me, you're holding me back, you're smothering me, and and that's certainly how she sees it.
And these are the two worlds that pull her.
Right. And I mean, and to some degree, you can see what she sees. I mean, I think that's what makes it so twisted, is that you understand what Nina's thinking to some degree, and you have the same suspicions that she does, but you don't know where those end, and so, I mean, because I suspect the mother character, I suspect Cassell's character, to some degree. I think less so on this viewing, but initially I certainly thought, oh yeah, is he just a womanizer? Does he actually? And I think it's very clear in this one that he does. And the Lily character, is she just trying to sabotage Natalie Portman to get the part, or I mean, yeah, you don't know.
Because the next day, when she rushes over back to the studio, she sees Lily practicing the Black Swan for Cassell.
Well, because the mother had called. The mother, I think, didn't she call and say Nina's not feeling well, and so she can't do it.
Yeah, I think.
And I think that's premiere night, right? This is the night of the premiere.
Yeah, it's close. She does, Lily does a pretty good job, and Lily gets placed as her alternate, so that just adds more drama. And then Nina thinks at this point that Lily's sabotaging, and she goes on more paranoid ideas of her. And this is why this is one reason I think that Lily's character is one of the more trusting characters, is because there's two ways to read this scene. Is that when Nina talks to Lily about that night, and then Lily says, that never happened, did you have a dream about me? It's really embarrassing if you think of it through Nina's perspective. It's very oh shit, no.
Oh yeah, no, that
it's
but the thing is that
it's really embarrassing, but watching it again, Mila Kunis's reaction is perfect, because she's more proud than anything. It's no big deal to her.
Good?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that I think it might not be a super well-regarded Oscar-winning performance, but that's where the casting and the choice of
but she almost
having
plays
Mila
what you think of
Kunis
as herself very well.
Yeah,
she fits the role.
Yeah, so I
Mhm.
I just thought that
No,
like that's very underrated casting, and I
well,
believe
there's
Mitless.
always the possibility that she ran off and told everybody and is sniggering and all that. You never see that or hear that, but again, it's, she's like, shut up, and she's playing with it, but again, it's not really within earshot of anybody. So like you're saying, I mean, you can read it both ways. Though you can be like, look, she's, I mean, I think it maintains that doubt. I ultimately see what you see, and that the Lily character
It's
is
more like the
is
party girl
fundamentally
vibe
decent.
rather than like
Right,
the high school gossip girl that wants to ruin your life.
right,
Like,
yeah. but
um,
but you can see where Nina, especially being surrounded by that sort of thing, which is established early on, that they all stab each other in the back, and then Lily's kind of above that. But then you think, well, God, she's Machiavelli. She just wants you to think she's above it, and like, and so it really does take you down that rabbit hole. That was something else that kind of just stuck out to me, though, was like how Nina isn't so much personally embarrassed by that whole thing, which like any normal person, like that you'd shoot yourself, but she doesn't give a shit. Like she's just is more, I think, professionally concerned with, like, you didn't wake me up, right? And that's more like that's all just a distraction. It's getting in the way of her singular goal, which is, the being the lead in this again. Yeah, I'm kind of confused on what to call it. Either play, a musical, I
it's
don't
just a
know, dance,
ballet. Yeah,
ballet.
yeah,
There we go.
it's a ballet. Another hallucination or so that they get is Nina's up all night, like way past like what you mentioned earlier with that one guy being like, fuck it, I got a life. It's a big day tomorrow. I'm
Yeah,
gonna get
yeah.
some sleep. So Nina just goes on practicing by herself, and then she hears a noise, and she basically sees Lily fucking like like someone like wearing like
It was
the
Cassell. I think it was Vincent Cassell's character.
she was fucking like that guy that like the remember the guy that like she was like
Oh,
rubbing his like she was like rubbing his bulge.
that's the thing with these effects, though, is that like they fuck with you, so you don't actually know what you've seen half the time, and I think
So
that's something that's so well done about it.
right,
But no, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
it's
Are
not
you sure there
easy.
wasn't a moment where that guy became Cassell? Because they do that trick a few times in the
I
movie where,
think they
like,
did.
Lily becomes Luna.
I think
Yeah.
they literally I think they did that, and the first time I watched it I thought it was just Cassell or like her just making that up, but it literally could have
Mhm.
been Lily. I have no idea what his name
That
is.
could have actually
He's like,
happened. Yeah, I
yeah,
didn't even think. I
he's
thought it
a
was a hallucination.
he's a strong male performer with similar hair to Vincent Cassell's
And he
character,
drops her.
and like yeah, and he actually
So,
drops Nina
conspiracy.
during the performance
Right.
because
I
he's
didn't even think of that
distracted
now.
because he
Yeah.
just got his bulge rubbed
Right.
by Lily.
Yeah. So
And
it's all that. No, you're probably right then. Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So then she's thinking it's a conspiracy. You dropped me because you're with her,
yeah,
and that, yeah. So that
oh,
works.
so like that was like one of the final hallucinations, and he was also in the warlock costume too. So I think they did mismatch Nina's face onto Lily's and Cassell's face onto that dude's. Um, but we kind of just
Maybe
explained
I'm
that.
just totally misremembering it, but no, because what you say lines up a lot more with, again, like her feeling like
Yeah,
she's
because there's
being
always a
snatched.
hint of reality within the hallucinations. I'm
Yeah.
not sure that that scene was just a pure
See, I
dream
thought it
or
was,
hallucination.
but no, but you're probably totally right. She actually probably did see Lily getting nailed, by like you said, the whatever,
But
whoever
just a
that guy
different
was, the lead
guy.
dancer. Yeah,
Yeah, but
right.
you're definitely right. She's getting paranoid. She's like just freaking out at people. And Beth is like what you alluded to earlier, where throughout the
Yeah,
entire
that's a
movie,
sort of
Nina's kind of looking at
it's
her
a
like
subplot, but it kind of matters.
this is what I could become. You know what I mean? Like that's always like Nina's fear in seeing her, like
Yeah,
because like Winona Ryder's character taking the rejections walks into traffic and gets hit by a car. Not sure how much of this is a dream or not, but like she goes in and she like peeks in
that
at her
being planted.
wounds. It eventually climaxes.
That could have been
That's
real. I mean, I
yeah,
don't.
that story climaxes to the day before the big premiere, where she leaves like a couple gifts, and then Winona Ryder freaks out and starts stabbing herself in the face.
I get, well, like you said, bringing up the idea of mirrors. I mean, Beth is really just another mirror as far as like what she's going to become. In all likelihood, like her time will pass. I mean, she's aware of that with her own mother. She says, you were already 28 when you had me. You were past your time essentially. So yeah, this is like anything. They're like pro athletes. You have a window, and she's aware of this. And for that brief window, though, she wants to be perfect. So. But yeah, as far as Winona Ryder, there was definitely that fear that like when she has the nail file in her hand, like, but she just killed another doppelganger version of herself, basically, and then that comes up again with Lily, and so you're like, oh my God, she's just like a homicidal maniac in all likelihood, because you don't know how real any of this is, but yeah, it's I think I think they show Portman stabbing herself in the face, I think they do another projection thing where it's
they
like
do.
her own face. Yeah, so
that scene's the one I have the hardest in seeing any thread of reality in, whereas with
I mean, you think maybe she's fucking stabbed Beth. I mean, is where I take that. You would think they'd come and arrest her, but like maybe there's definitely fear when you see her drop the bloody nail file in the elevator. Like fucking Christ,
and she didn't do it to herself, so.
Right.
But yeah, so back to the night of the performance. So one of the penultimate scenes in the movie is when is right after Nina falls in the performance. She meets Lily in Nina's dressing room, and that leads to a fight. And Nina pushes Lily into a glass mirror. How did I think it was just. I think it was. I'm trying to remember like the exact dialogue that went back and forth, but I think it was like
essentially about you're trying to steal my part, but beyond that, I can't remember.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was. I don't think there was much of it from like Lily's end. Like,
yeah, it was like, this is my time, and that's like, no, it's my time, and that's what I remember. Is the tail end of.
Nina pushes Lily into the glass mirror. Glass breaks. Lily falls down, and then Nina stabs her in the abdomen with a piece of mirror.
Yeah, she's being strangled, so in her mind, it's self-defense. She's defending herself against the black swan, I guess, is how you
right. But also, when she's being strangled, the face on Lily turns into Natalie Portman's face.
Oh, I don't remember that. All right.
And then that's when you had like no, it's my time. And then
okay, all right.
And then she stabs her, and it cuts to Mila Kunis like bleeding through the nose and the mouth, like.
Yeah. But I mean, the first time I saw that, I absolutely thought she just totally snapped and killed this Lily. I didn't think Lily was this big monster that she'd been imagining, but I certainly thought, okay, you snapped and you just killed the person. Because remember, it's only her and Lily that have that room. That's their dressing room. And you think that Cassell's character, Tomar or whatever, has given, he's put them together so that I think he's hoping that Lily will bring the black swan elements out of Nina. I don't think he's ever really thinking I'm going to cast Lily, but he's thinking she'd be a great influence as far as a black swan on Nina. So I'm going to put them two together in this dressing room. So there's nobody else who's likely going to enter there. So that's why, the rest of the play can kind of play out without, she knows her time's limited, and it's in a different way as we learn, because she's actually just bleeding to death. But she knows that I've got to make the most of this moment, because whatever the case, my time is limited,
And then Nina drags Lily's body into the shower and hides it, right? In that initial scene, it's Nina hiding Lily's dead body, and there's blood, and there's a towel, all that stuff. And then Nina comes out and does the Black Swan performance. And to me, my favorite single shot in the entire movie, because there's two parts to the Black Swan performance. There's like an initial part that she dances very well, and then there's like it's like an exit stage right, and it's an enter stage left. But for me, the shot of her just walking backstage after immediately exiting,
It's a tracking shot, right? I
yeah,
think I know what you're talking about.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like this tracking shot, and you see like her eyes just look crazy. Athletes talk about this a lot, where you get into like a flow state as a performer or whatever, whether it's like a physical performance or a musical performance, whatever it is, like just nothing can get in your fucking way. And that's what you just see through those eyes. It's like nothing is getting in the way, and it's like the next scene is like her going up to Tomas and finally
No, but
seducing him.
yeah, right. No, I'm glad you could articulate it, because like there is something about the ending of this film that I didn't feel on any previous viewing. Like when I watched it this time, the ending, I mean, I knew how it was going to end, but I was like, I felt what she was describing. I don't think I quite felt it in any previous viewing, but like, so it's really interesting to me, the mechanics of how, despite not really knowing much about ballet or anything, you can have this like vicarious feeling of satisfaction watching somebody pull something off, and the way it's framed and everything he's doing there. I have bits and pieces, but I really don't know how to articulate it. I just know I was like, that was fucking beautiful by the end of it,
Yeah.
So,
And so right after the Black Swan performance, she goes back into her dressing room. She's in the White Swan stuff, but someone knocks on the door, and it's Lily saying, "Hey, you fucking killed the Black Swan. Holy shit." Like,
yeah.
but yeah, so then she like shuts the door. She opens up the shower, sees there's no dead body there. And then she looks down, and her
Well,
dress.
I think one of the things that's sort of telling is like some of it had to play out. Because she says, I know things got a little whatever between us at some point. And you're like, well, at what point was that? So she must have actually been conversing with the Lily character and basically just taking notes from her. But you get the sense that like what probably was going on in Portman's mind is she was running away with this idea that's established earlier on, and as information becomes relevant, so which can be retroactively. But so Cassell, it points to Lily at one scene and during one scene and says that like look at her, look at the way she moves, I'm doing a horrible stuff like Schwarzenegger, but imprecise, and he has them room together, basically in the same makeup, like because he wants Lily to rub off on Portman, and so I think that she ran away with that idea. Like she's probably having actual conversations with Lily, but then she's reading into it, she's projecting, she's doing all these like crazy things. So Lily is probably there for at least a few scenes in the picture. She's obviously certainly not a figment completely of Natalie Portman's imagination, but she's projecting all these Black Swan elements. The thing's obviously very foreign to her. She's very precise, she's very controlled, and so when you look at Lily, it's the opposite of all that, and those are the elements she's looking for. So it's almost a caricature of her. She's villainous and whatever is what it becomes, but really in all of that, you can see her trying to kind of decipher something that she wants to be able to capture, but it's hard. It gets really weird. So I don't know how to articulate it exactly, but you can see where I'm kind of going.
You're good. I see. And another really big thing about like the Black Swan too is just like the quality versus the White Swan is just fearlessness. And like that's what you see when Nina finally does like her Black Swan perfectly, is just absolutely
above all, it's
fearless.
a certain type of freedom, which you see that she wants. She wants to kind of fly the nest. I mean, she just doesn't like who she is on some level. She doesn't like where she's at. She wants to be free. And ultimately that's freedom through, I think there's the striving for perfection. There's the striving for freedom. Those things sort of become one at the end. I don't, but and that's kind of contradictory because perfection isn't perfect. It isn't controlled, and that's perfect. There's a lot going on. I don't know how to, again, quite articulate in a short time, but so
she sees like that her dress is red, and like she pulls out a shard from the mirror that had been in there, and she's freaking out, and then you still hear the music still going. The show is still going in the background.
Right. And you
So
can see
she
that
does
moment
that
where
while
she's
she
like,
like puffs up
the
back
show
her
must go
makeup
on.
again. And it's just
Right.
yep, exactly. The show must go on. And she
But it was
got
already that way. I mean, she was kind of already in that mindset. As far as she was concerned, she'd already killed Lily. Like this was, there
mhm.
was the clock was ticking. So
Yeah. Then
right.
she does the final white swan section in the ballet. And in the in Swan Lake in the story, like the white swan goes to like the top of a mountain or something, and like falls and kills her and dies, falls to her death because of like
Yeah,
the
and
shame.
her energy sort of being sapped by like and so in a very literal way, her energy is being sapped because she's bleeding to death. So
And I think she gets one final look at both Lily and then Cassell, and then the last thing she
mother,
sees
yeah.
is her mother, and her. You could see that her mother's proud of her too.
And there's that hesitation because she knows she's going to her death, right before she jumps. She doesn't want to. She wants to savor that moment that she's been working for. There's a little hesitation, and then that really beautiful slow motion moment where she nails the landing. She sticks the landing, and that landing, she lands in her deathbed, but it's it's slow motion. It is that there's just something about the way that shot.
Like you were saying, it's got to kind of be like the look that any like mother bird or mother figure like has, like
Oh yeah, you're flying
not
to
when
death.
not when their child dies necessarily,
No,
when their
but
child
going to
grows up.
college, flying the nest.
I just think that's like a really good way to send off that character. And then in the final shots of the scene or of the entire film, Cassell is like, "You were brilliant," and then they notice that she's bleeding out, and
Yeah, and then
like,
he calls her princess, which was something earlier on when she had that conversation with, who knows if it's with herself or actually with Lily, but it was an expression of self-doubt, like where she was talking about how, the Lily character is saying, whether it's Lily or not, is saying that, like, well, yeah, my little princess, it's so gross because he must say that to all the women. And then, Portman's like, I think it's sweet, that's just for Beth. And to me, that really feels like a conversation she's playing out with herself. Like, does he actually give a shit about Beth, or is that just something she says? Does he actually give a shit about her, or is that just something he says? And and that's what that was about. So in the end, he says, "My little princess, what have you done?" Because she's stabbed herself, and then, but she escapes that. She escapes being the cliche. She escapes being Beth. She goes out with grace. She dies young, whatever, So that's, yeah. And then we learn at the very end that no, that doubt was substantiated because now she's the little princess, and this cycle is just going to repeat itself. So she escapes it by dying young. It's perfect in that way. It's perfect in a lot of ways, but she doesn't have to go out the way of Beth, sort of graceless. As much as Cassell's character tries to make it graceful for her, it ultimately isn't. She's drunk and having all these episodes, and so in a lot of ways, it's perfect,
yeah,
and yeah,
and after Vincent Cassell says, "My little princess, what have you done?" She just says, "Perfect." Just it was perfect, and then we fade to white.
I felt it. Yeah, I felt it was perfect. Yeah,
Yeah, and then we fade to
and
white,
the
and it's
beautiful
done.
sound design you really get to appreciate.
Yeah,
It's a
like
lot
the
like Requiem for a Dream in that way, where we listen to the sounds of the beach,
yep, the
where
credits
we
are
just hear
like
the
an
cheers and that
applause.
fades out.
And
Yeah,
just going back, like thinking about it more, like I really think that like her having killed herself with a mirror,
that was
the,
an
the
interesting point that, yeah, I
your
didn't even
only
think about
like
that.
your reflections of yourself and like the way you think about yourself is gonna like make you or break you in the end. Basically, your opinions of yourself, whether you want to push yourself more or whether you are destructive already, like it's going to be like the determining factor in your life to some degree.
Yeah, there was one other thing as far as Aronofsky, and I think that this picture is most like out of his entire filmography, Pi, where he follows an obsession to its pathological limit, and so it's very, you can see that sort of playing out here, where like the only way I don't know. There's just something there. She kills herself at the end, and that was the other thing I meant to bring up is that I really admire how this film can totally flash that in your face. It tells you the plot of Swan like multiple times, and you don't pick up on like that it's going to play out exactly like that. She's going to kill herself at the end. There's even that line with, I don't know if it's Tom or Jerry or whatever the fuck, even though one's name isn't even Jerry or something, but where she relays the plot and then he says, oh, so it's a happy ending, and she says, no, it really is beautiful. And then he says, like you. And I think that's a bit of misdirection, because I think the like you isn't that you're beautiful. It's like you're going to kill yourself at the end of this whole movie, and so like it puts that right in your face, and you don't know that first viewing that like, this is how it's going to end. So it's, I mean, and it does that earlier on too. So it's kind of impressive that I can get away with that,
A lot of that too is through like the power of like the performances and the direction too, because like there is no dud role here.
I feel this made.
I feel like Mila Kunis and Vincent Cassel get slept on in this movie just because of how fucking good Natalie Portman is.
Yeah,
and I think that's probably like the best performance of any actress in that decade, at the very least, in like the 2010s.
No, I think so too. I know there was the controversy was like whether Portman had actually done all the moves, and the way they're shot, it's like there's a lot of focus on the footwork, and her face doesn't always show up. So it's like, I don't know, but I just know that the performance really was fantastic. I know this was I mean, I think a lot of people knew she was great. She had been given a lot of great performances, but this one was truly transcendent. So when I first saw the picture, I kind of viewed it on that meta level of like, this is Portman finally, I kind of couldn't look at it outside of that. Now we're like 10 years later, and so I can view the movie more definitely looked at it as sort of a meta of like, Portman this is a perfect performance and all that. I've never heard him make this point. I don't know if this is something he feels personally, but I definitely know it's something Von Trier's expressed, and so it would kind of connect with our previous film. I don't know if it's anything he's expressed. I haven't read interviews or anything, but certainly through creating systems like Dogma or whatever 95, and then after that he created one which was a computer algorithm that would predetermine the shot. So he didn't have any control over like what angle I'm going to shoot from. He let a computer decide what that would be. So I think for any creator, there's that idea of wanting to give up control, wanting to be free of this psychotic need to control your own work. And like, because there's another director I really Pascal Longier or whatever, and I saw his first movie, Saint Ange, and it's not a very good film, but he said he wanted to respond to the critics by shooting it very free form and very loosely instead of trying to be such a control freak about it. And they made Martyrs, which is absolutely one of my favorite films of all time. So that seems to be an inner struggle with a lot of creatives, So I think you could maybe view it on a meta level as Aronofsky kind of confronting that, whatever that is, that seems to strike at creative types where, it's trying to break free of control. But yeah, so there must be something to that.
Out of 5 stars, I think, since it's I think it's my favorite Aronofsky film. And
really, okay, shit.
So I'm gonna give it my first 5-star rating, because I love me some Aronofsky.
I know, I absolutely do too. I'm just trying. I'm like comparing it to everything else he's done, and compare
it to all movies. Don't compare it to everything.
Right, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Because we will be reviewing some trash down the line, and you don't want.
For the record, I'm only torn between a 4.5 and a 5. Like, I don't want to be too conservative and be like, it's a 4.5 because I'm too afraid to give it a 5. But I'm really just trying to I feel like 5 should be reserved for something special, and it's but this really is. It really is. I feel
I
like
think part of my thinking is that, like, for me, if I consider it a great director, they probably have one
this
5-star
is a
movie for me at
landmark
least.
film. I just think it was a breakout performance. It was a I wouldn't say it was a breakout film for Aronofsky because he'd already kind of had that with The Wrestler. I think was when he first released attention, but you can fuck that up by having a failure as your next recognized film, and this absolutely wasn't. And Portman given countless great performances before this, but I think this was again the first one that people just went, holy shit, And so yeah, I guess honestly, yeah, it's probably a 5. It really, if anything's worthy of a 5, yeah, I can't think of any major plot holes or anything that really, other than, okay, this is petty, I'm nitpicking, but she starts to hemorrhage profusely at the very end. And I'm like, that's a little convenient. She should have, I don't know why unless she just ruts or something. I don't,
Yeah, I don't love the sound design either because it's like you like
oh, you hear that? I didn't even
it's
notice.
it's like a perfect sound design towards the end with the orchestra and everything else, and then you just hear like a blood squishy sound.
Oh, like one of the cheesy squib sounds or something. Yeah,
a little bit. I gave it like the credence of like, okay, why didn't we see her bleed before? And it's, well, she was wearing black and she didn't take the mirror out, so she didn't just start bleeding profusely just
right.
yet.
So now, but she's still been dancing for a little while at that point. So it's
so like, the
know.
timing of
That's
when you noticed that you stabbed yourself with the mirror was a little convenient, but that was something that's some rope I was willing to that was some rope I'm willing to give. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's
the
really
payoff.
the only nitpick I have for the picture.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
I noticed that too. And it is petty, but you know what? We welcome petty here. Petty is welcome. All right. And did you have anything else to say, Dakota, before I send it off?
If you like this movie, there are other movies. Obviously, I'd say anything else out of this filmography, but the biggest influence that I wanted to mention was a film called Perfect Blue from 1997. It's animated, but it was by a director called Satoshi Kon, and he had died of cancer or whatever. But Aronofsky is admitted to being very familiar with his work. He says that Black Swan wasn't directly influenced, but like if you watch it and you also acknowledge that it's pretty fucking similar, like that seems a little unlikely. He even wrote the eulogy for the man. So it's like, but that's a film I would recommend. It's animated, but if you can get past that, I know that a lot of people. It's more. It leans heavily into the horror aspects of the narrative than this one does, but it definitely plays around with perspective and what's real and what's not, at least on the same level as Black Swan, if not more so. The ending was a little bit of a letdown, but Black Swan is exceptional, and that's a film that's very similar to it and was almost certainly influenced. So that's what I would recommend, but certainly, God, anything else that Aronofsky's done, because I don't think he's made a truly bad film at this point. Here we are in 2020, so at the end of it, and I think they're all good. Pi would be, I think, actually, like I said, the most similar of his filmography, and that'd be his first film.
The Wrestler and Black Swan always seemed like gender reversed roles.
Pieces, yeah.
So
yeah, no, that's
you like The Wrestler's pretty similar as well. But what you point out with Pi and sort of like the psychological
the
regression.
And
Yep. Thank you to anybody tuning in. Please hit the like button and subscribe. And we don't actually have a slogan, so I'm just gonna say goodbye, guys. Have a good one.
You've been spoiled, bitches.